How can just two words from an ordinary man shake a room full of authority? He was just a janitor, quiet, invisible, the kind of man people passed without a second glance. A black father working late, doing everything right, asking for nothing. But that night, in a room filled with power and pride, someone decided to turn him into a joke. A Navy SEAL admiral, surrounded by laughter, looked him up and down and asked a simple question, one meant to humiliate, not honor. What no one expected was the answer. Because the moment he said "Lone Eagle," the laughter didn't just stop, it died. Faces changed, the room shifted, and the man they thought they understood suddenly became someone they couldn't ignore. But how could a janitor's words silence a room full of men trained for war? And what were they about to realize far too late? By day, he was just another face in the background, pushing a cart, wiping down floors, keeping a spotless building that most people never thought twice about. A black father with tired eyes and steady hands, working long hours to make sure his family never felt the weight he carried. He showed up early, stayed late, and kept his head down. Not because he had nothing to say, but because life had taught him that sometimes silence kept things simple. Still, there was something about him that didn't quite fit the role people had already decided for him. A quiet confidence, a presence that didn't beg for attention but somehow held it. That night was supposed to be no different, another late shift, another room to clean, but this room was different. It was filled with decorated men, powerful voices, and a kind of pride that didn't leave much space for someone like him. As he stepped inside, conversations slowed, eyes turned. Judgments formed in seconds, and then came the smirk, the kind that wasn't loud but said everything. He kept moving, pretending not to notice, but something in the air had already shifted. Because in a room like that, it only takes one moment, one question for everything to change. The room didn't feel the same anymore. What was once just another space to clean had turned into something heavier, something watching him back. He moved quietly, keeping his routine steady, but the energy around him kept tightening. Conversations that had filled the room just moments ago were now breaking into fragments, slipping into low murmurs. Eyes followed him, not curious, not neutral, but measuring. Then came the laughter. Not loud at first, just enough to be noticed, just enough to remind him exactly where they thought he belonged. He kept going, one step then another, cloth across the table, head down. Finish the job, leave, but it didn't end there. A chair shifted sharply. The sound cut through the room like a signal. Someone stood. Heavy footsteps followed, slow, confident, deliberate. Not the kind you ignore, not the kind that pass by. They stopped right behind him. For a brief second, everything went still. Then came the voice, calm, controlled. But carrying something beneath it, something sharp. A question was asked, simple on the surface. But the tone twisted it into something else entirely, not curiosity, not respect, it was a test. A performance, something meant for the room more than for him. The kind of question designed to remind someone of their place. The air shifted again, more eyes turned, more silence spread. The room wasn't just watching anymore, it was waiting. Waiting for the answer, waiting for the moment to land. He paused just for a second, not out of fear, not out of confusion. But because something inside him had already decided this moment mattered more than it looked. Slowly, he turned. For the first time that night, he met their eyes. Not one pair, but all of them. The ones filled with doubt, the ones filled with quiet amusement, the ones already expecting the outcome. And at the center of it all, the man who asked the question, standing tall, certain. Completely unaware of what he had just stepped into. There was a flicker in the janitor's expression, subtle, almost invisible, but it wasn't weakness, it wasn't hesitation, it was something else. Something that didn't belong in the role they had given him. The silence stretched longer now, long enough to make even the confident shift slightly. Long enough for the room to feel the weight of something changing, though no one could name it yet. Because deep down, something didn't add up, the way he stood, the way he looked back. The way he didn't shrink, that wasn't how this was supposed to go, and then he answered, just two words, quiet, clear, controlled. But the moment they left his mouth, the entire room changed. The laughter vanished completely, like it had never existed. The confidence in the air cracked. Faces that once held smirks now held something else entirely, something closer to disbelief. Because those two words didn't belong to a man like him, they belonged to someone else, someone trained, someone known. Someone with a past that didn't match the story they had already written in their heads, and suddenly the question wasn't funny anymore. It was a mistake, a serious one. Because the man they thought they understood was no longer standing in front of them the same way. And now every single person in that room had to face one uncomfortable truth. Who exactly had they just tried to humiliate? The silence didn't just linger, it tightened, like the entire room was holding its breath at once. The Admiral's expression shifted first, just a flicker. A crack in the certainty that had filled his posture moments ago. His eyes locked onto the man in front of him, searching, replaying those two words as if they couldn't possibly mean what they did. But they did because Lone Eagle wasn't just a name. It was a reputation. A call sign that didn't get handed out. It was earned in places most people in that room had only heard about in stories. And now it belonged to the man they had reduced to a joke. A low murmur spread, barely controlled. Chairs shifted. A few men straightened up, their earlier amusement replaced with something far more uncomfortable. Recognition, realization, regret. The janitor didn't raise his voice, he didn't defend himself. He didn't need to, he simply stood there, calm, steady, unshaken, and somehow that made it worse. Because the Admiral, a man used to commanding rooms, now stood in one he no longer controlled. The power had shifted and everyone felt it. His jaw tightened, his stance adjusted. For a split second, it looked like he might say something, try to regain control, reshape the moment, push it back into something manageable. But nothing came out. Because there was nothing he could say that would undo what had just been revealed. The man in front of him wasn't invisible. He wasn't small. He wasn't who they thought he was. And deep down, they all knew it. The room that once felt so certain now felt exposed, because this wasn't just about one mistake, it was about what led to it, the assumptions, the quiet judgments. The way they had all, without question, decided who this man was before he ever spoke. And now they were standing face to face with the truth they couldn't ignore. The janitor slowly picked up his cloth again. No anger, no pride, just quiet control. As if this moment wasn't new to him, as if being underestimated was something he had learned to survive. And that's when it hit hardest. If this is how they treated a man like him, then how many others had they already dismissed without ever realizing who they truly were? No one spoke as he went back to work. The moment had already said everything. The Admiral stepped back, not dramatically, not loudly, but enough for everyone to see. The distance between them wasn't just physical anymore. It was something deeper, something harder to face. For the first time that night, rank didn't matter, authority didn't matter, respect did. And it had been missing from the start. The janitor finished what he came to do just like every other night. Same steady hands, same quiet focus, but the room around him had changed. The same eyes that once dismissed him now avoided him. The same voices that laughed were now silent, because the truth had settled in and it wasn't comfortable. He didn't stay for an apology. He didn't ask for recognition. He simply walked out, leaving behind a room full of men forced to confront something they couldn't outrank or outpower, their own assumptions. And maybe that was the real impact, not the call sign, not the shock, but the realization that respect should never depend on a title, a uniform, or a past someone can prove. Because how many people walk through rooms every day, unseen, underestimated, already judged? How many stories go unheard simply because someone didn't look like they mattered? That night ended quietly, but its meaning didn't. It lingers in every workplace, every street, every moment where someone is reduced to less than who they are. And it leaves us with a question that's hard to ignore. How many lone eagles have we already overlooked just because we never bothered to see them?